Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tonight, I'd like to discuss an issue that I've often talked about on this program, the issue of ignorance. I believe, and I've said it on this platform, that ignorance is the worst case for Africa, worse than death itself. Because of ignorance, I think it is not an exaggeration to say that we are a failed state in Zimbabwe because of ignorance. Here is one individual, Professor Lumumba. Many Zimbabweans out there will be very familiar with him, talking of the same subject, ignorance. Let's just listen to what he has to say.
Are in their position, I would also pursue the interests of my people. The tragedy is that while they pursue the interests of their people, many of our leaders pursue the interests of their pockets. The Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe said that the trouble with Africa is simply and squarely a problem of political leadership. He was not insulting us, he was diagnosing us. Across our continent, we have ministers who enter office poorer than church mice and leave office richer than international bankers. We have parliaments that behave like auction houses. We have judges who quote the Constitution in the morning and count bribes in the evening. Some of the people who sit in our highest offices are not leaders, they are thieves in suits. So when a powerful country comes offering loans, trade deals, security cooperation, or partnerships, the question is not only what do they want, the question is also who is signing on our behalf and what did they receive for their signature. My brothers and sisters, as long as thieves sit at the negotiating table dressed as statesmen, Africa will always lose, even when the document is called a partnership. What then is the responsibility of the African citizen? In a democracy, even a broken one, a thief does not break into State House with a crowbar. He is carried there on a ballot paper. The hand that steals your future is carried into office by the same hand that marked the ballot or by the decision not to vote at all. The first duty of the citizen is to know. Ignorance is the oxygen of tyranny. Ask yourself, if you stop 10 Africans in the street today and ask them about the African Union's Agenda 2063, how many will know what you are talking about? If you ask them about the African Continental Free Trade Area, how many will understand its promise? Yet, if you ask them about the English Premier League or the latest celebrity scandal in America, they can give you a detailed analysis. The second duty of the citizen is to demand. Write to your representatives, question your councillors, challenge your ministers, join civic organizations, occupy the public space with your voice, not your silence.
I'll stop it there. I think he has put it beautifully. The first duty of a citizen is to know. Because only when you know can you meaningfully play a meaningful role in the governance of the country. What we have in most African countries, notably Zimbabwe itself, the level of ignorance is just unbelievable. And if you look at why Zimbabwe is a failed state, you could do the analysis And you'll find that most or the root cause will boil down to ignorance. I'll talk of two aspects where that was shown clearly in Zimbabwe's history. Before independence, one of the rallying calls was one man, one vote. People should have understood what that meant. One man, one vote. Everyone should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That was the rallying call. And if people didn't understand it, they should have taken the trouble to know. Knowledge is everything. Knowledge is power. And yet, when it came to the elections in 1980, as much as it was agreed at the Lancaster House that both ZANU-PF and PF-ZAPU would withdraw their freedom fighter operatives from the field during the campaign period to designated assembly points. ZANU-PF agreed to that and signed on the dotted line. But by the time they went back to Zimbabwe, Mugabe and his colleagues had changed their minds. They did not withdraw all their operatives from the field. They did something else. They instructed some of their freedom fighters to stay in the field with a specific instruction, i.e., they should campaign on the basis of if ZANU-PF does not win the elections, the Bush War would continue. Of course, the people voted to end the Bush War. But that's where ignorance came in. Because when they had ZANU-PF operatives campaigning on that basis of if we don't win, the Bush War would continue, that should have set off alarm bells if they'd understood what one man, one vote really is. This was their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And now they're being asked to give it up. And if they had any brains at all, they should have realized that if we give it up, what guarantees will we have that there will be no Bush War? Because lo and behold, they failed to stop the Bush War. The Bush War came 3 years after independence in the form of the infamous Gukurahundi massacre. The primary purpose of Gukurahundi was to force PF-ZAPU to give up its existence as an independent party, because that constituted a serious political challenge to ZANU-PF. And so PF-ZAPU were forced to give up that, and they finally did in 1987 with the signing of the Unity Accord. And as soon as that paper was signed, ZANU-PF launched, it cleared the desk, and Mugabe launched the de facto one-party state dictatorship. That has ruled the country to this day. There's no doubt that ignorance was our worst enemy there. The other situation where ignorance played its role is during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. It is disappointing that even now, with the benefit of hindsight, many Zimbabweans out there have no clue what the GNU was about, much less that the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the democratic reforms. Indeed, men don't even know what the reforms are. And so when Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends sold out and failed to implement even one token reform, one can only imagine who the chief beneficiary of that was. ZANU-PF, of course. Only individuals, one or two, have admitted, and notably in this case, Professor Atham Tabara was one of the few who have acknowledged that yes, MDC leaders took their eyes off the ball during the GNU and failed to implement the reforms. The others have pretended that they don't understand the question. But that doesn't change. That doesn't change anything. The truth of the matter is that was the golden opportunity to implement the reforms, and the opportunity was lost. And the people themselves, why they failed to realize what was going on, even to this day, beggars belief. You cannot have a healthy and functioning democracy unless the people are educated, knowledgeable, objective, and diligent in carrying out their most sacred duty in a democracy, to hold those in positions of power and authority to account. The last 2 years have been frustrating for some of us, because in that period we have tried to remind our fellow Zimbabweans that the promise by Nelson Chamisa to implement, to plug the vote rigging loopholes was a lie. Without reforms, the country was just going round and round in circles. And this has been at the heart of our problem. And yet, the people were so naive and so gullible, they believed the lie that Chamisa had plugged the vote rigging loopholes. ZANU-PF was not going to rig the elections. He even boasted a few days before the elections that he was preparing to form his cabinet because the party was going to win those elections. He even evoked the name of God. This was God's plan, he insisted.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan yaMwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
Two years down the line, there are still a lot of Zimbabweans out there who still refuse to accept that Chamisa lied. And yet this is the basis, the beginning. We cannot have a serious debate without accepting historic facts. Did Chamisa lie when he said he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes? The answer, of course, is yes, he lied. And the follow-up question is, why did he lie? In this case here, he lied because he wanted the people to participate in those flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, and in return, he and his colleagues would get a few gravy train seats. You understand that, you can also stop this history repeating itself. As Professor Lumumba said, the first duty of a citizen is to know. The people of Zimbabwe must know that ZANU-PF will never reform itself out of office. They must know that the primary reason why the people elected and have risked so much to elect MDC CCC leaders these last 25 years was on the understanding that these MDC leaders would implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. And after 25 years, including 5 years in the GNU, the people must know that MDC CCC leaders have sold out. So if you want change, you should not be going back to ZANU-PF and expect ZANU-PF to implement reforms, because they will never reform themselves out of office. You've got to go back to the opposition and elect opposition leaders who will implement those reforms. But if you cannot even have the common sense of accepting that the MDC leaders, Chamisa and company, have failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years, that Chamisa has been conning people to participate in flawed elections only to perpetuate the dictatorship, then you are the one who is perpetuating the dictatorship yourself. I totally agree with Professor Lumumba. Knowledge is power. The first duty of a citizen is to know. We cannot run away from that reality. We have got to have the common sense to realize that if we are serious about getting change, we have got to be knowledgeable enough to know what we need to do to achieve change. After 45 years of rigged elections, every Zimbabwean out there should be holding their heads in shame that in this day and age, we are failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections, even after 45 years. Why? Because we don't even know what is required to make sure that there are free, fair, and credible elections. In this day and age, we still do not know what is required. The first duty of a citizen is to know. I think Zimbabweans out there, we have not been responsible enough to seek knowledge. In this day and age where information is readily available, it is shocking that we should see that level of ignorance. And some of it is outrageous. To deny that Chamisa lied, for instance, is pathetic. What do you think you're trying to accomplish? Chamisa lied when he said he was going to plug all the vote rigging loopholes. That is a historic fact. And it is totally meaningless to deny that reality. Particularly if doing so means he's going to con you again to participate in 2028 to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the nation's suffering. We need to come to our own senses now. There is no excuse whatsoever for failing to stop ZANU-PF getting away with a rigged election come 2028. Because we should know what it will take to stop ZANU-PF getting away with it. We should stop participating in flawed elections that are so flawed, so illegal. The only logical thing to do is to stop participating. That should not be rocket science. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.